Welcome back to 7th Grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about old phones. Since the introduction of cell phones into everyday life, we have had a record of our social circles, our interests, and habits right in our pockets. Essentially, tiny computers that have advanced with the technological trends of the time. They present a record of our lives in a society that has been overrun by technology. So, go back in your memory and remember which phone you had when September 11th happened, when Hurricane Katrina happened, when the first black president was elected, when WikiLeaks began to happen. I was going through a box in my storage that has all these phones that I've had over time. I don't sell them, I just keep them because they have my personal information on there. And if you go and you look at these phones, you'll see a timestamp of what my thought process was at the time. And there'll be photos on there, there'll be music on there. If you look at the contact information, the people that I was calling at that time, the different phone numbers that I had at that time, all of that is a sketch of who you are at that point in time. And when you look at the technology of the phones, it says a lot. For example, my first phone was a Nokia. I didn't get a cell phone until 1999. And up until then, I was just using a pager. And once I got that Nokia phone, it was a black and white phone. And I remember like there were some custom ringtones you could get. And then
did it have an antenna? Did you pull the antenna out?
It was a blue and silver phone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you remember that one?
No, sir. I had the first cell phone I had was a Nokia, and I got it because I was working. You know, I was like you. I had a pager, but because I was working the railroads, I went and got a cell phone. And I just got I was at Verizon, excuse me, and I took the phone they gave me, and it was like an Altel or a Nokia, and it had an antenna on the side that you pulled up. You know what I'm saying? And I remember going to a family function, and my aunt made fun of me. She said, "Nigga, why you got the remote control in your head?" I'm like, no. She got me because my aunt like an aunt like that, and she like just was roasting my ass.
Yeah.
And so so it was just funny, like, no, because I got the most basic cell phone there was.
What year was that?
This is 98. This is right before texting. It's, right before texting, and so, or right as texting was emerging.
98 was when text messaging began to happen. Because as soon as I got that Nokia, I was sending people text messages.
I remember that. And then a short time later, the phone I got was the first, like, kind of smartphone was the Palm, was a Trio. And I got the Trio, the one that had the keyboard on it. It sent messages. And because everybody else was starting sending text messages, they would send this basic shit. I would send like a fucking dissertation because I had a whole keyboard. And I paid like, and this is how stupid I was. I paid $40 for that phone. Now, that was big money back then.
Yeah.
And so, like, and I remember sending videos, and I remember doing certain shit that nobody else could do yet. And I was like, okay, I'm on the cutting edge. And then the motherfuckers went belly up,
But it was crazy if you look at a year before that, 97, there was this phone that every black dude had, and it was this walkie-talkie. It was a phone.
The Altel.
No, that wasn't Altel. It was called something else. But this phone was more like a walkie-talkie, and it was made for people who work outdoors or like industrial factories and stuff.
It was instant. It was instant radio. You just you hit that button and you could talk to somebody. It was no dial. It was kind of dope. It was freaking structured. Yeah.
It was a walkie-talkie that worked over cell phone networks, but they got rid of it because you use almost zero of your data to have these back and forth conversations. Only one person could talk at a time, but it would beep each time.
Yeah.
Like the incoming message would come. Beep. Hey, what's up, man? What's going on? Beep. Nothing. Ain't nothing. Beep. Hey, police out there. Watch out. Beep.
Yeah, it was literally a walkie-talkie, so you couldn't talk at the same time. Dude, it wasn't like a cell phone.
All the dope dealers had them. You know what I'm saying? Every brother in the hood had one. And it annoyed white people so fucking much. They're like, get these nigger phones out of here. This is too fucking much.
Hold on. You saying some deep shit. When those phones was out, nobody got arrested. Think about that. No. Think about what you just said. Some dope shit. I try to give people credit. think about it. Nobody got arrested. There's no saved data.
There's no saved data, but you can't record anything.
There's no recording of it. It's just you would hit the chirp to talk. You hit the, hey, what up, cuz? Hey, Kinfolk on the way. Yeah. Package? I don't know nothing about no package.
Nextel. Nextel was the name
Nextel,
of the company.
And you would hit that. And like I remember the thing about 98, 97, I was on the brink of technology, but I wasn't in it. And I remember they had already had cell phones and shit like that in Japan, and you knew this shit was coming. And they described, one of these guys had described his experience with cell phones from Japan as being an intimate thing. That these cell phones, that they had like scanners and readers, and we didn't have apps yet. We didn't.
They had this network called Docomo, and Docomo was basically 4G. So they had 4G in Japan when we were only on 2G.
Yeah, years before us. Mm-hmm. But I just remember seeing that phone had like a scanner on the top, and they were scanning prices, and they were comparing prices. They were scanning stuff, and it would tell you where to go. And it was just so dope. Like, and they just said how much of an intimate experience it was. I'm like, how the fuck can a cell phone be intimate? Fast forward to now, like it is, because you're right. When somebody says intimate, you think it's sexual, which could be, but this is more like it's more tied to everything you do now. And you saw, and they were doing that shit like years before we got it. And I mean, the concept, just the cell phone, just for communication, they're like, nah, man, we gonna get you. We gonna become part of everything, you know. But yeah, that chirp to talk, that was some dope shit, bro. Right. You know, nobody got arrested under that because you knew who was talking to you. There was no record of your location and all this other shit. You know, motherfuckers get hemmed up now because they don't know how to use their cell phone, and motherfuckers get hemmed up now because they have a need for social media. They're so addicted to social media. Yeah, man. Snapchat, nigga, Zen, capital of the world.
What about the people who use maps of different types and they have the locator on while they're trying to navigate to a certain location, but they never turn the locator off?
Hold it. Okay, so let me transition for you. So I went from the Trio
to I don't want to see that.
no, to the Palm, and I had a Palm, and remember the Palm was all one screen, and you would slide the keyboard down. And then all of a sudden they went belly up because they had a problem with their it was called RIM. That's who owned Palm. But so I remember having a cell phone and I was at work and a little motherfucking satellite pops up on my cell phone and I called you from my work phone. And then I said I'm like, hey dude, I had somebody else take a picture, but what does this symbol mean? And you like, I don't know. Dude, why is there a satellite showing on the top of my cell phone? At the time I had an Android. It's my first time having an Android. And I'm like, dude, this shit ain't cool. And me and you were talking back and forth. And a short time later, I remember this is when my experience. So I was talking to my homegirl, and I said, it was your Destiny. Well, my daughter's name is Destiny, and my cell phone called her. And she's like, Ren, who you talking to? My homegirl at work, you know. And that's when I'm like, fuck it, fuck this whole cell phone thing. The two experiences that. One, when I said the word Destiny, it automatically called my daughter Destiny. And two,
when was that?
Where was I?
When was that? What year was that? Mid 2000s.
7 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago.
Okay, well then that's like the third or fourth generation of cell phones. So.
Yeah. And so. But then a short time later, like I said, I think I'm having the wrong order. When I hit you up and I see this little satellite at the top of my phone, it's different symbols, letting you know shit. But then one is a satellite, and it's like weird. I'm like, it was more like remember your old school satellite dish that you had in the backyard when it was one of them, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? Who are you sending data to? And that's what I'm like, that's when I got real weird with the cell phones. I was like, I ain't into this shit no more.
What kind of phone was it? What brand was that one?
I just remember it was an early Android. I don't remember the brand. I'm sure I got that picture someplace if I can find it. But that's what it just offended me. I'm like, you know what? I'm good. You know, I'm good on this whole.
So, all right. So I kept Nokia phones I had the same phone from 99 until 2009. So for 10 years, I had the same type of phone. And then I got a black and white Nokia that has a slide up. It's It's basically has a screen and it had little like joystick controls, and then you would slide it down. There would be a keyboard right there.
Yep.
So I've always been a keyboard guy. I like tactile shit, and I kept these Nokia phones up until 2012, 3 years later, when I got a BlackBerry. And Blackberries for me were great because they had encrypted email. They had
Yep.
all these things that protect you from hacking and all this stuff. So the whole reason that I used the Nokia is because they had the best dirty electricity shielding, and so that was the main reason I used those. But then I got the BlackBerry, and the BlackBerry was cool because, all right, on the Nokia was the first phone that I had that I could watch video on. Excuse me, the second Nokia that I got in 2009. That was the first one that I had that I could watch video on, and it had I could put micro SD cards that I loaded up on my computer, and I could put little small videos on there, and I could put music on there. It was great. But I remember, shoot, man, it must have been 2003, 2004. I was at Lenox Mall in Atlanta, and I saw this black dude. He was advertising customized micro SD cards that you could buy and load into your phone that would have music and stuff. So basically, this dude was like curating playlists and loading it in like videos and stuff and putting them on SD cards and selling them to people, which is genius. You know what I'm saying? Because for people who aren't tech savvy, that's great. Then people got hip and figured out how to download shit because bandwidth increased. But this is way before the iPhone came out in 2007. And then in 2000 oh shoot, man, I didn't get a touchscreen phone until 2019. Yeah, I was using a BlackBerry up until 2019, way past, they stopped making them and all that shit. But see, the only reason I couldn't use my BlackBerry anymore because they couldn't be used beyond 4G. Like there was like a limit on like how far you can go. Like at a certain point, like the cell phone provider was gonna like stop allowing the older CDMA network to be used on their lines.
Blackberries were dope. Let's really talk. Yeah, that was a powerful machine.
Because I could type with two hands at the same time faster than I do on a keypad. The funny thing about using buttons is that you're pressing these buttons. There's fewer mistakes than when you are using this. I hated the iPhone touchtone keypad. My homeboy got one, and he was like, "Check this out." I'm like, "This is fucking stupid, man. Like you gotta hold your finger at a certain angle just to get this shit." I'm like, "Well, I could just press the buttons and like." You press it down, and like if the letter doesn't get typed unless you press that button all the way down.
Your frustration is palpable, but
you understand exactly what I'm talking about.
The one thing on my mind is I've been watching a lot of videos about cell phones, and there are a shitload of cell phones that are not available in the American market, and Americans are under impression it's like 3 or 4 good cell phones. No, there's like literally thousands of cell phones that are on next level cell phones that you can buy, and you can go to Sprint and have them turn it on for you. Go to T-Mobile, whatever they're called now, and they can turn it on for you. But you only get 5G or 4G, 2G, whatever, all this other bullshit. But the point I'm making is that we're thinking that you got Apple phone, you got a couple Android phones, and that's it. No, there's shitload of Android phones out there that are amazing, do all kinds of shit, and they're like less than $500, and they're like some of the best phones in the world. And the reason I'm making that point is because once the American market they decided for you that hey, we ain't gonna carry BlackBerry. There was a reason for that. So do your research. But a lot of those phones, like my brother told you about the shielding, or like a lot of the military chicks I met, they use BlackBerry. They're like, yeah, these phones do this, and this, and they're telling you that these phones do something that's like really impressive. You're like, oh, for real? And a friend of mine, pilot, he said like, okay, he said the only phone that he ever, you can't use cell phones on airplanes. He said his BlackBerry, when it went to update, it did fuck with his equipment in his plane. He even said that.
Okay, but here's this thing though. Go back in time, and how many times do you remember cell phone companies or whoever shutting your phone down and restarting it remotely without you doing that? That has been happening to me since my first phone. That has been happening for a long time. And I would talk to people about it. I was like, does your phone just shut off and then turn back on? And they're like, yeah, I didn't reset it or nothing. They're like, yep, because they're doing it remotely. They have remote access to your phone without you realizing it. Now,
What year? I don't remember that, but what year do you think that was?
oh, dude, I mean, it been happening since '99.
Never. I think I've had it one time.
Dude, I've talked to all
Now,
different types of people, and it happens. And they're like, yeah, man, this shit
now,
would turn off and turn right back on.
now. I remember I was in my mom's basement. I was either talking to you or my boy Dede, and me and you have had long phone conversations, and a landline would shut off on us. And I'm like, dude, obviously we saying some shit we ain't supposed to say.
Mm.
like, I mean, literally, that shit has happened to us. We were on landline,
Yeah,
but
but
that's
I
what I'm
mean,
like,
y'all would have conversations about things like, you know,
everything.
the Street
Yeah,
Fighter video game and how it was ripped off from an idea that y'all had, and that shit would be.
straight up Illuminati talking about real shit. And I was on the same phone. One time I was talking to you, and I was at the time it was my cousin's house. My mom was staying with my cousin, and I was living in the basement. This is before I bought my house. It happened to me and you. I remember that's when I'm like, that's when I got certain events happen that alter me forever because I'm like, okay, people really are listening to our phone calls, and that shit right there stuck with me. And same thing when I told you I had a couple incidents with my cell phone where I'm like, I'm seeing this weird shit on my cell phone, and I'm like, why the fuck is there a satellite on my cell phone? When shit like that happens to me, sometimes I can't get the answer, but I don't need the answer. I know it's wrong. Too many people get wrapped up in the high or why, or how and why and shit like that. Excuse me. But once I feel something I've been done wrong, I figure out how to cut that shit out or limit certain things. So that's a reason that you know, I was behind when it came to the whole computer generation. You know this. I got on the internet late. Like I was in college and I left it alone. I started working, and you know that's just what it was. Then I get my computer. It was MySpace. You get wrapped up in MySpace a little bit, yada yada yada. Um, but it was the same thing with the cell phone. Certain things would happen where I'm like, I don't trust this shit. This is way too fucking invasive. Like it's in your life. It's embedded. This is a mold. This makes you're snitching on yourself. That's the
Okay.
way I felt early on.
Well, considering that, when you view your phone collection from a geopolitical perspective, you can see the point when personal privacy almost completely disappeared. The Sharp JSHO4 was the first cell phone sold with a camera feature for mass consumption. The use of cell phone cameras to record criminal activity was not commonplace until about 2004 2005. Scriptwriters for movies and television began putting camera phones into the hands of fictional characters while crimes were being committed. The public then consumed said entertainment and begins copying this behavior. Cameras were no longer bolted to the sides of buildings, in parking lots and on highways. Those cameras were now on the person next to you. Congratulations, you are now an active citizen in Snitchtown, USA. In 2012, the city of Camden, New Jersey fired its entire city police force in policing responsibilities and handing police responsibilities over to Camden County. The new police force was twice the size of the original, and a mass surveillance system was installed covering the entire city with cameras and microphones. Random gunshots were recorded on microphones, and echolocation was used to locate the suspect nearby. So, Camden, New Jersey was one of the first cities to do this. And it was a model for how other cities and municipalities would update their policing to include echolocation and microphones and cameras.
Was there a problem with corruption also? That's why they fired the whole squad. There was some other things that led to that, but
Yes,
that's
yes, yes.
yeah,
That was a
that's some amazing
huge
shit.
contributing factor. But they say the crime went down, but now you live in a literal police state. So then you also have other cities in California who are putting microphones inside streetlights. So this is being recorded and fed back to police computers in the city downtown.
Now, there's a book you introduced me to in high school and told us that shit way back in '92. Not Behold a Pale Horse, but it was the New World Order book.
Ralph Epperson, A New World Order.
Yeah, and I remember that was in that book. And I remember talking to this chick about the shit. And when we were doing something outside, she literally, let's walk over by the tree. She didn't want to talk. She literally did not want to talk around streetlights because of that book. And it's just crazy because, like I said, so many times we read these books and you're not dismissive. That's not the word I'm using. It's more like
you don't have the right context. The problem is,
exactly.
This stuff was so far in advance when you were hearing about it. You didn't have the right context. You understood the motivation. You understood why these people wanted to do it, but you don't understand when and how it was going to be implemented.
And all it does is make you aware. So when the shit started happening, like, again, we reference the book Behold a Pale Horse a lot also. And I remember they were talking about tracking kids by putting trackers in their hands, or and the guy, but that was Bill Cooper. What made him so special? He would tell you like, hey, they're gonna do this, this, and this. And I remember the first time I saw where they tried to microchip a dog. I remember being 95, and I'm in a small town of Stillwater, and there was a vet advertising, hey, microchip your dog, you'll never lose it. And I just remember seeing the sign, and again, unrelated. But the point being is that sometimes you would read about this technology before. I don't want to say before it existed, because obviously, well, he wouldn't be telling you about it if it didn't exist. But it's a context issue, or there's how do you slide this into the American psyche or the world psyche and make it normal or not offensive, and then you realize that you're giving up your location, you're giving up your rights, shit like that. And so I just remember talking to this chick, and she's like, nah, let's go over here by the trees. I don't want to talk about, they have listening devices. Again, you think this girl's paranoid, but I read the same book she read because of you. So I knew she was like, you're not paranoid. Just let up some. Fast forward to, you said 06, 08, whatever, and they literally have that in Camden, New Jersey. So
no, that's 2012.
2012, excuse me, forgive me, 2012. And so it's just the fact that a lot of this stuff was introduced to us in different books and different things, and you dismiss these people as being conspiracy theorists. Take that goddamn theorist and theory off. When you say conspiracy, you should not say theory in the same breath, because there's two separate things that have been, they got you confused. It is a way to attack critical thinkers.
But around that same time, there was a lot of stuff happening with 2012. That was a huge marker in humanity for, in time and the social makeup of our reality and technological views. It was because in 2013, media outlets reported the first leak based on the top secret documents of Edward Snowden. And that time he worked at a contractor called Booz Allen Hamilton, which was working for the NSA, contracted by the NSA. And he downloaded 1.5 million files and began to distribute them. Once he had a meeting with this journalist, Glenn Greenwald, and Laura Poitras. But that was happening. The WikiLeaks were happening. All these things were going on. Julian Assange in the WikiLeaks. But if you go back to the beginning of the Patriot Act, that's where all this shit ramped up. Like, they had to create this war to cement the military-industrial complex and its control over mainstream society, because it was only 6 weeks after the September 11th attacks that the USA Patriot Act was signed into law.
I remember having this talk about the Patriot Act. Me and you had a talk about, it was about George Bush's next term. And I just knew, September 11th happened. I just knew there was other shit going on. And I just knew that we were in a Democrat in office and, get back to normal, get some real money flowing. And then I remember all these young white guys voting for George Bush, and they said it had to do with September 11th. I'm like, and I'm talking about, this is like 2 years later. This is early on. This is before we knew it was an inside job. We felt it because of documentaries like In Plain Sight. We felt it because of different shit like that. And I think that came out probably shortly after the election, those documentaries. But it was one of these things where I'm like, everybody who was in my circle felt like, hey man, this is an inside job. There's more to it. Don't fall for the okie doke. But then all these young white people, they were like, yeah, we need to get those guys on that whole. And I'm like, what guys? It was a terrorist act. Terrorism ain't got no like boundaries like a country. It just blew. You feel me? It just blew my mind.
It was like fighting Cobra. You know what I mean?
Yeah, see, me and you grew up understanding that there's a terrorist organization that's going, Al Qaeda.
The crazy thing is, like, it was even more broad than the terrorist organization. It was like in any form.
Yeah. Yes. And so, and it just kind of bugged me because like you're voting based on fear, and that's just. I don't know. I didn't get it at the time. I understand it better now. Fast forward to, Pan, Epa, whatever demics just happened. But people do things based on fear, but sometimes is the fear real or is it imposed? You dig what I'm saying? You better brush your teeth or you get cavities in your butthole. What? I don't want cavities in my butthole. There's certain things how people use fear to control you or manipulate your decision making. And I saw it then. But early on, we knew about Building 7. Me and you were up on shit like that. The guy that this sounds crazy, he's dead now, but I had a guy I worked with, name was Sonny, and he just one day he said, because he heard me talking to somebody, you'll be into this, and he hands me a stack of CDs, of computer CDs and DVDs, and you watch them. And you're like, oh my God! It was so many things. It was the first one I saw was called In Plain Sight, and it was that's the name of the documentary. Yeah, see, this is me and Roscoe are close, y'all. Motherfucker who don't know, so once you watch that CD, DVD, I think he gave me the CD version, and I put it in my computer, and you watch that, and it names 19 things.
Who was that guy that gave you those CDs, those DVDs?
You know who he was to me?
Hold on. His name start with a G.
No.
Okay.
He worked with me. His name was Sonny.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. He passed, but when it was like somebody handing you the Quran, the Bible, the Torah all at once. You dig? Mm-hmm. Like, you need to read this. Yeah, right, pal. Oh my God. God talked to you, and so, but
y'all have to understand, this is before YouTube was created.
Yes, yeah. You know what? God, dog, you just said some deep. Okay,
so hold on, I gotta interject. Before YouTube, there was the sneaker net. There was people walking around handing shit. Mixtapes of conspiracy shit to each other.
Yeah.
There's conspiracy mixtapes.
Okay. So my first conspiracy mixtape would have been when you got me reading those books in high school, Behold a Pale Horse and New World Order. My next mixtape was when somebody gave me a Steve Coakley VHS. In college, and I showed it to you like I was. I'm home for summer, and I saw like, hey, cuz you gotta watch this motherfucker. And this nigga was talking Boule, Trilateral Commission, and all this other shit before anybody else was. Then you find out, and this is something that like my brother just told you. You have YouTube now. You literally can think of an idea and hit YouTube and find it. Like we'll talk about old shows, but one of the things when it came to this Trilateral Commission and the books, because Steve Coakley would tell you what books. he says read Spiro Agnew's autobiography, and he would tell you this different shit, and he would line the shit up. Well, the funny thing was, recently, there used to be a show back in the 70s called Barney Miller, and there was a guy on there, and it was funny because there's a guy who's like supposed to be crazy. He's like a conspiracy theorist way back in the 70s. He's like the Trilateral Commission, and it's in Japan, England, and America, and he's breaking it down.
Dude,
and then
I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and Questlove was on there, and they were talking about the early days of the Philly scene, hip hop, and like the beginning of like neo soul and what that shit was. And he talked about
the Aquarius is whatever. I know. Yeah, that's some dope shit.
But neo soul was essentially started by Jay Dilla, which is crazy.
Yeah, yep. That's crazy, ain't it?
Yeah, the dude from Detroit started that shit. But check it out. So then, like one of the these are all black people talking, and one of the black people jokingly say, "Oh yeah, you know, y'all probably got your Boule invitation," and everybody started laughing except for Questlove. And he got quiet, and then like the sister called him out. She was like, "Everybody laughed except for you. Like you're the only one quiet, ain't say name." He's like, "Mm-hmm." And then like he tried to brush it off. He's like, "Nah, they ain't give me no invite." But it's like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here.
Look, so this is some intimate shit. So all you podcasters who do tune in and listen, white, black, or indifferent, I remember. So the Steve Coakley DVD, VHS, I never got back. I know who I lent it to. And one day, the guy I lent it to, he had this epiphany. So he worked at the Malcolm X Foundation. And one day there was a bunch of literally politicians and community leaders there. Now, my friend is a simple man. And he's like, "Hey, man, I was outside working on the air conditioning." And he walked in there, and he told me who was there, who was arguing. I knew because the color guy was there, and some other guys were there, and you know the color guy's son was there, but he didn't invite me. And so my friend who ran the Malcolm X Foundation described this whole meeting to me, and I go, "Oh, so you had a Boule meeting there?" And he just paused. And he was, and you saw the wheels turning. Because like I said, he's seen the Steve Coakley. He said, "Yes." He said, "Duct tape, that was a Boule meeting." And he was just so, he said, "There's no way around it. That was a Boule meeting. Whether they knew they were Boule or there was," he said, "I don't see no strings from the top coming down from," but he said that was a Boule meeting. And because there's no other way to describe it, you have black middle and upper class and politicians all come together to discuss how my city is about to be ran, and they couldn't agree on shit, and they were yelling and cussing. He's like, "That was a Boule meeting at the Malcolm X Foundation, and I'm so embarrassed."
Yeah, it's at Malcolm X, at a building named for a man who was a pure revolutionary.
Hold up. This is at the Malcolm X birth site. We're not talking about a building. We're talking about his birth site. You got to remember the Malcolm X Foundation.
You know what that is? That's not far from where we grew up.
No, 100%. But
matter of fact, it's right by a park that we used to go kick it at after we got out of junior high school. Yeah. So it was intimate in the sense that because you know he said he goes duct tape. You have a way of putting shit into context that sometimes is really annoying. There's some personal shit that happened, and that's why he said that. But you know, he said there's no other words. It's like I remember one time me and you had a conversation about the word asshole. There's no other word combination that when you call somebody an asshole, people instantly know what the fuck you mean. You know, ass and hole, no, but that guy's an asshole. Yes, he is. That was a Boule meeting. He's like, "Man, that was a Boule," because again, he had seen the tape. He knew about Steve Coakley, and again, like I told you, you said the deepest shit. There's always a context issue when it comes to these books.
or when it comes to this information. And then you said something else even deeper. We had mixtapes back then. You call it sneaker gate, where when you would find something, when somebody would present you with something, I had to call you like, hey, cuz I got something for you, and I would send it to you. Or I would wait till you came into town, like, hey, fuck it, clear your calendar, cuz we about to go watch some shit. And we would sit there and watch it, and like, hey, make me a copy. I'll bring you a copy, cuz. And
yeah, go order a guy for those pizzas. It's about to get serious.
there's some deep shit. And so, um, all I can call it is the movement. The movement was very organic, but like I told you, everybody had weird feelings about September 11th because how could these motherfuckers with slingshots attack America? You feel me? How could these motherfuckers and mudheads actually hurt us? And then you were presented with the idea that, hey man, motherfucker can't fuck with you. It happened to me earlier because you got to remember I was in Oklahoma City during the Oklahoma City bombing, and so my concept of being touched was different than theirs. And let me clarify what I mean. You know, you think that Russia is going to bomb you with nukes, and can't none of these other motherfuckers fuck with you. Like that's how arrogant we are. You got Russia, a little bit of China, and then that was it. Ain't nobody else fucking with America. You feel me? Can't nobody come over here. Can't nobody pull their dick out and piss on you or nothing. None of that shit. And then you got these motherfuckers who took over some planes. That's the narrative. Whether that shit really happened the way they say, whatever. And fly into a building and change you forever. Well, you gotta understand is that I was in Oklahoma City when that shit happened, when this terrorist attack happens, and you got these motherfuckers doing tests. Like, if you get a chance, you know, you wrote a movie, and if I told you, if you get a chance, check out the McVeigh tapes, because they interviewed Tim McVeigh, and he talked. Like, so what happens is when he goes to court, he ain't saying shit. He's acting crazy. His lawyers are saying this is, you think this nigga's being quiet. He was not being quiet. He invited a reporter from New York, because he's from the New York area. And this motherfucker came and he recorded him, and he tells everything. He tells a test run. He talks about Timothy Nichols, and he says that we almost killed. So they did a test run at a park in Oklahoma, and they pulled the truck there. They got the shit in there. They're just seeing, you know, they're working on the communication, how shit's gonna go down. And his father and son pull up. There's a pond, and they're on this boat, and they pull up close to him. They thought, we need to kill these motherfuckers. You know, they talk about that shit. They talk about all that stuff. And so the reason this is so important is because, like I said, you got to remember, I come to class one day and somebody says, hey, did you hear the sonic boom? Because they thought it was a sonic boom. Then 15 minutes later, we get the report from, hey, somebody just blew up the Merrill City, the Merrill building in Oklahoma City, excuse me. And what the fuck? And so as the facts come in, somebody pulls up with a big yellow truck full of fertilizer, and it was just crazy as this information comes out. So my concept of a terrorist act is different than yours, because I saw that building. I couldn't go downtown. I had to go to work, and we had a curfew, so we had to leave work early because we had a curfew because you're in the city. Next, I lived in Edmond, and you got to remember, so they saw Timothy Nichols with the black hair. They thought he was Arab. Nobody knew anything about this white boy Tim McVeigh yet. And so when this shit happens, there's a large Arab population in Edmond, Oklahoma, where I was staying, and they were bombing these motherfucking stores, beating these. So they don't talk about that. So they was beating these motherfuckers up. So a short time later, they didn't realize that Tim McVeigh was already in jail for the busted taillight. So the motherfucker that did this is already in jail. Some kind of way, they run something, they realize that motherfucker was leaving the scene. FBI shows up. They were about to let that nigga go. So back to the part. So when people thought it was Arabs, so they were basically busting these people's stores up, terrorizing their kids. These is white folks. So, like I said, my idea of being attacked was already different because of that incident right there. And it was 3 years later. You were still going downtown, and the people who own these buildings, because there were other buildings that were damaged by that, just by the shockwave. And them people just got that insurance money and didn't fix shit. You know, they just, oh, fuck it. 100 million? I'm out. So, like I said, the idea that you got to have an airplane and a bomb and tanks and shit to be attacked, nah, my nigga. When a motherfucker fills a big-ass rider truck full of, you know, a ton of explosives and they turn fertilizer, and turn it into an explosive, you know, that shit right there it changes shit. So I'm not saying. And here's another thing: people forget they tried that with the World Trade before. That they and they caught the motherfuckers. So those were Arabs that got a U-Haul truck full of explosives, put it in the parking garage of the World Trade and blew it up. And but it didn't fall. It wasn't like it wasn't as bad as September 11th attacks. And you know how they caught the motherfuckers when these motherfuckers went back to get their deposit. So they send the FBI agents to the U-Haul truck location. They're like, "Hey man, we know they ain't gonna show up, but we'll come here for a couple days." So the two Arab guys show up because they wanted their deposit back, and that's how that's how they catch these
So
motherfuckers.
being cheap,
You
got caught
do
being cheap.
yeah, but see, and that also shows you that this whole they're in cells. These motherfuckers is not some like criminal masterminds, and they're broke. So they figured like, hey, our truck blew up during the World Trade. Well, that's not fair. We need our deposit back, and so they arrested the motherfuckers. But like I said, my concept of a terrorist act is different because I had already experienced it. I had already been like deep in some shit where I had to have a curfew and we had to do this and we couldn't go there. And they had martial law. So when people talk about martial law, it's different for me because I experienced martial law. And them motherfuckers was on that shoot to kill shit. And this is before Katrina. This is before all those other experiences that rocked our country. This shit had already happened to me.
Mm.
So I'm big on that. Not conspiracy theorists, but when my phone was saying that it's a satellite tracking me, I got a problem with that. When people talk about martial law is not a big deal, and King Alfred plan and all this other shit, that's it's different to me because, like I said, before you see y'all was introduced to it during Katrina. You feel me? I was introduced to it when I was in college. When all these books that you gave me started making sense. So when this old man hands me a bunch of CDs and tells me in plain sight, and I watch the video, here's the shit that you guys are just now finding out, but me and my brother knew back then. There is outside of the Pentagon, there's a motherfucking gas station that has surveillance because every gas station in America has cameras. So when the FBI, CIA, NSA, whoever the fuck it was, came and stole those immediately, the gas station workers told you, "Hey man, that was a cruise missile. That was not an airplane that hit that building. What do you do with that?" What do you do when they explain that jet fuel is a biotoxin, and that if jet fuel had been on there, you guys wouldn't have been able to come in that area for weeks because it's so toxic. So but you had crews there cleaning that up immediately. That's not jet fuel. What happens when this plane only hits the part of the Pentagon that was being renovated? What happens when they show you a picture of the Pentagon? There's a book sitting right there, and we know jet fuel burns at 2,300 degrees or 2,300 degrees, and that book doesn't catch on fire. That's because it was a cruise missile. What happened? Like, there's so many things that they run down to you in this in plain sight. And a lot of stuff they talk about with the World Trade is much more difficult to explain. Oh, yeah, whatever. But when they talk about the Pentagon, the most heavily surveillance building in the world, and you ain't got no videos of that shit, nah, man. The Pentagon is what changes you. When they start talking about the Pentagon, that's when you're like, man, this is all bullshit, motherfucker.
So surveillance and data collection is highly lucrative. So these
Now, yes, it's a whole
corporations
industry. It's an industry now,
have
yes.
basically created an industry around this data collection. But unlike
Before it was just the
industrial
government, it was small, yeah. But now it's like literally like you have whole organizations and companies snatching shit up.
and unlike
And
industrial capitalism, which profits from exploiting natural resources, labor, and more, surveillance capitalism profits from the capture, rendering, and analysis of behavioral data through instrumentarian methods that are designed to cultivate what is called radical indifference. Radical indifference is a form of observation without witness.
that's deep.
The surveillance capitalists found an untapped reservoir of information that their services were collecting for internal analytics and programming, and they saw an
Cell phones.
opportunity.
Yep.
They could sell the data exhaust, like the exhaust from your tailpipe. This data exhaust to advertisers. So basically, somebody put a little bucket at the end of your tailpipe that's invisible, that's collecting all that exhaust from your cars you think is,
It's
polluting the
minor. It's
atmosphere.
nothing.
Well, we're going to make some money off of that. And for them, the humans attached to it and to that data are just accessories. The core of their business is harvesting, analyzing, and selling data about the people who use their products. The author Shoshana Zuboff talked about this in her book, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. And the first corporation to engage in surveillance capitalism was Google, followed by Facebook. Recently, firms such as Microsoft and Amazon have pivoted towards this same model. Karl Marx's analysis of the relations between the industrial capitalists and workers is closely analogous to the relations between surveillance capitalists and the users. Furthermore, three problematic aspects of industrial capitalism that Marx describes are alienation, exploitation, and accumulation. And these are also aspects in new forms of surveillance capitalism. So you have this data exhaust that people give off all the time, and they don't think about where it's going or how it's being used.
If it's being used at all, yeah, because you assume it goes back to that toxic indifference. People love to sit here and say, like, hey, man, they ain't got to track you. They got your cell phone. Yes. So your indifference is basically you're giving carte blanche, you're giving permission to have your life, penetrated in such a way. Like, no, that's not right.
But this radical indifference is a form of
Yes.
observation without witness. It's stealing. It's just stealing. That's all it is. It's stealing your information. You can
It's
give
like
it.
somebody stealing a blade of grass from your yard. You ain't gonna catch that. Like somebody walk by and pluck a couple, and that's what they're doing. It's so small that
But
you don't.
before you know it, by the
It's
time they have plucked all those blades of grass one at a
yeah,
time, you gonna
it
come
has a
out one
cumulative
morning
effect.
to get in your car and you got a bald headed ass lawn.
and we laugh, haha, we chuckle. But that's what happens with your life and your information, where you don't want people to know your social. You don't want people to know where your kids are. You don't want people to know what your wife does for a living. You don't want people to know what your husband is doing, and that's how they get you. Also, they can also use it to blackmail you. Say for instance, that a husband is cheating on his wife. Like, all right, hey, we know you went to the same house 13 times in a 6-month period. Why is that, Senator? Yeah, because you was cheating, and now all of a sudden there is no privacy. There is no. How many times have you watched First 48 and these little niggas get caught up doing murder and shit all because of a cell phone? And your cell phone pinged off this tower and pinged off that tower. I'm like, nigga, for real? Y'all ain't figured this shit out yet?
Right.
That's the shit we talk about. I'm not saying people are going to commit murder, but I'm definitely saying that indifference is the fact that cell phone is almost like a part of your body now. People cut their hand off before they leave their cell phone at home, and that's
But look at the reaction that people will have when they realize they have left their cell phone at home. They act like a child. They throw a temper tantrum, and
Hey, leave
then
work, nigga.
depending on like how well mannered that child is, eventually they calm down. Like, all right, man, I'm cool. But
Yeah.
and we've all done it. We've left our cell phone at home and went to work and had a fine day, no problem. You were still able to do your job because there was a phone, a landline at the office that they could reach you at.
Hold on. See. This is how old we are. Remember, our parents would tell you you had to have a couple quarters in case you had to make a phone call,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how you sit your kids out in the world. Now you don't send your kid out without a cell phone. Like, look, you can call me anytime. Man, that's a hustle. All you doing is having that fucking umbilical cord,
Dude,
electrical umbilical cord to your child.
I was in Dallas, Texas during the pandemic, and I think this was like late 2020. No, it was the summer of 2021, and movie theaters had just opened up again, and I went to go see a movie, and I was walking through the mall, and I went by the bathroom, and I saw A payphone. Man, that felt good to see that thing.
Look, so okay. I lied. I told you that we had to have quarters. When we were kids, we had your parents gave you dimes. And like, see, you caught the bus early, but I would call my mom. My mom like, here's 4 dimes. When you're
See,
done
but I was
bowling,
an
call me.
explorer though. Like I was
Yeah,
always about venturing out, going out on my own.
hold on. We always was. We was always around, but my mom was like, look, when you're done bowling, call me. And I would call. She would answer the phone. I'm like, hey, mom, I'm done bowling. Okay, I'll be there in a few minutes. Or hey, mom,
But
I'm
she
leaving.
trusted that she had raised a child that was competent enough to go out and behave in public properly without making an ass out of her and yourself,
What, what,
and
but you,
and conduct yourself around strangers without getting kidnapped, because back in the 80s that was a thing.
okay, see,
Motherfuckers in a shitty looking A team or a Dodge van pulled up,
nigga,
run.
a white van, nigga. Look, we talk.
I saw a dude pull up a couple months ago in one of them vans. I said, "Bro, you got that kidnapper van." Everybody busts out laughing because they knew exactly what the fuck I was talking about.
I remember being in grade school and they would make an announcement. You know what? The class is not dismissed. There's a white van in the vicinity. We're not going to. We would stay in class until that van went away. And nigga, like no stranger danger. Like they were specific. Like, look, somebody saw a white van and they got the license plates, and we called the police. Y'all sit tight. School is not at 3:15. Shit, nigga, you sit tight. But you got to remember, like growing up in Omaha, we remember the killer. His name was John Juber. We remember this guy snatching up paper boys, fucking molesting them and killing them. So that shit was real. Like
But
they found them
then
little
you
white.
had the urban legends. You had Booty Freaky Fred,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
had the
yeah.
Killer Clown, and you had Three Finger Willie.
And all these different things are ways that your parents would teach you about strange. Like we didn't have stranger danger. We had them motherfuckers. If your mom like, hey, booty freaking Fred will get your ass, and you're like, what? Like, yeah. But here's the problem: booty freaking Fred was Larry King. Just let's just put it in perspective. There was a nigga that went with the booty freaking Fred because looking back now, y'all can look up the Franklin Credit Union scandal, which we've talked about on other podcasts. Look up who Larry King was, and look up what he was doing with little boys' booties. You know what I'm saying? And once you find out what he was doing, then you find out Booty Freaky Fred was a motherfucker that ran a bank. You understand me? Yeah. And, he was part of the Republican Party too. So I know we be dissing Democrats and we diss Republicans, but
This
you need to know
motherfucker was Steven from Django, and
on the highest level.
he was also Creepypasta.
Yeah, he was part of the Republican Party. He sang at the Republican National Convention. He was literally embezzling millions of dollars, and he was raping little boys. And like this was, and this nigga he owns a honey baked ham in Virginia right now. That nigga's out of jail. So all you guys who think Booty Freaky Fred was just some kind of analogy, nah, motherfucker, that nigga was real, and his name was Larry King. Look it up. Like when you guys watch these detective shows, and they talk about their Franklin Credit Union scandal, and they make it seem like it's a conspiracy. What's the detective show that was on HBO? They reference the Franklin Credit Union conspiracy. That's what they call it. No, Franklin Credit Union scandal was not a conspiracy. Not when you got black boys and shit right now. Booty holes still fucking altered from shit that took place in the 80s. No, my nigga. So, back to what we were originally talking about. When you talk about how the cell phone and tracking is, people convince you that it's necessary for you to track your kids, and that was one of the things that was in Behold a Pale Horse. Like, hey, they're going to tell you that you need to keep track of your kids, and you're going to microchip them, and then you're going to find out the microchip is the a symbol of the beast and all that shit that we read about. And look, shouldn't you have to be careful as a child or as a parent, but that paranoia that they love to hit you over the head with, the fact that they are stealing your children, like, yeah, that's some real scary shit. But shit, my mom gave me a knife. She's like, look, you stab a motherfucker, keep it moving. Don't worry, I'll get you out of jail. You have to raise warriors. We're so quick to want to raise scientists and raise politicians, but we're not raising warriors.
But if you think about it, it's easier to kidnap kids nowadays, even though Everybody has cell phones.
Say,
Everybody has their
say it.
fucking head down.
Say it. Say it.
People are
That's some
walking
deep shit.
around like zombies with their heads down, and it's easier to lure kids into rooms on a virtual level through games like Roblox or Minecraft because it's been done before.
Don't forget a Pokemon Go or whatever it's called, the Pokemon
Mm-hmm.
game. We talked about that in the past.
Augmented reality.
You literally have kids meeting child molesters in the park and don't realize it.
Right.
That's some fuck. No. This is some serious shit. This look. Those cases do exist of these motherfuckers
Yeah,
playing
when that
children's
Pokemon Go came out, they were actually using that to lure kids, and to molest them. But this is the thing. This shit isn't going away. So all they're doing is they're getting better at using technology and hiding in plain sight. And so now they're using these laws to get these protections, which is crazy because then you hear this talk, this ridiculous talk, people talking about, oh, he's a hero because he has those thoughts, but he doesn't act on them. No, 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 no.
No,
You're
what?
you're just allowing, you're co-signing on that type of behavior. Now, I'm not saying everybody should be thought police, no, but don't encourage it on any level. And this is the crazy part. In comedy, you hear this a lot. Everybody wants to be so politically correct. Don't punch down, always punch up. Well, when you make jokes about kids, and these are inappropriate jokes, that is punching down. So if you're going to keep it 100, keep it all the way 100.00 people
Look,
always want to scapegoat their vice, but let everything else go under the chopping block.
look. Dr. Umar, he falls out of favor and falls in favor, out of favor. But one of the things he had brought up years ago was that be careful of this LBGTQ because eventually they're gonna put that P on there, and y'all motherfuckers is gonna accept that shit. And what he was referring to is that pedophilia is gonna become accepted because of this, because
There
of
is,
the
like,
gay
if you
agenda.
look at there's a version of the flag that's, instead of the normal bright colors, it's pastel colors. And the letters go, they're vertical as opposed to horizontal. Check that shit out, man. Like, that's their flag that they're using to protect these minor attracted people.
Yeah, and they love to use that term. Look, just because you give something a term does not legitimize it. Number one, number two. Look. So since we are hip hop heads, we gonna throw that shit out there. Motherfuckers are at Jay Z's neck, but he keeps avoiding shit, and that's maybe because he is Illuminati. We don't know. But what you got to watch out for is the two things that nobody wants to talk about. Everybody's on R. Kelly's ass, but when R. Kelly was with Aaliyah, Jay-Z was with Aaliyah, but Jay-Z was also with Foxy Brown. And so Charleston White, that's that crazy skinny dude that everybody's, he's like, look, Foxy done told y'all Jay-Z was sleeping with her and giving her a grown man sex when she was 14 and 15, but y'all act like y'all can't hear it. So now the whole deal with Jay-Z having that son, and he won't submit to a DNA test. Now, this kid do kind of look like Jay-Z. That don't mean he's the father. I don't know, but like I said, this motherfucker spent a lot of money to keep secrets, and y'all motherfuckers saying he's the best rapper ever. No, he's a piece of shit, and he's always done shady stuff. If one of the examples me and you joke about was Stankonia. Remember when Stankonia came out? That's Outkast and Jay-Z. Jay-Z, his team was bought 50,000 of his own albums so he can compete with Outkast because he didn't want to, trust me, this motherfucker's always done questionable tactics. But the bottom line was allegedly he was sleeping with Foxy Brown when she was 14 and 15.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like I said, what you just said was so deep is that funny thing is people when their affliction or when their vice pops up, they want to kind of brush it under the rug or, oh my God, for real, sweeping. All you hear is brooms. Look,
But then the crazy part about that is that she is the niece of Russell Simmons. And he has had allegations of sexual misconduct. And so then this guy, as powerful as he is, if you hear about your niece having relations with some guy that's 15 years older than her and she's an underage minor, aren't you going to do something about it? Or are you okay with the shit? Or are you the one that set it up?
No, hold it. Or you're a creep yourself. You left off part, or you a creep yourself because that people said Pimp C was killed. But remember, Pimp C did an interview with that Atlanta radio station where he talked about Russell, where he talks about the models and dildos and the booty holes and you a record executive. I think he was talking about him. You know what I'm saying? Russell said. So you'd be surprised. A lot of people have said stuff, then all of a sudden they disappear. You know, basically, I get how these record companies were set up by Jews and different things like that, but you got to understand there's other things that are woven in that fabric that people don't pay attention to, or people, oh, that's just Hollywood. Oh, that's just this. No, it's not just anything. When you hear Corey Feldman and Corey Haim talk about their experiences in Hollywood and how fucked up they were, or Corey was talking about, I guess he's supposed to release there's Drew Barrymore's memoirs. There's a book that he was trying to make into a documentary, but it got canned. I don't know what was in her memoirs. Please forgive me, but you got to remember, Drew Barrymore was a child actor. She was in the E.T. shit like that. There's people who try to blow the whistle, but either they get bought off or they get killed or they become discredited. Here's the thing that, like, when you talk about conspiracies, two biggest pop stars of all time, Michael Jackson and Prince, both died from a drug overdose. For how the hell does that happen? Michael has his own doctor. Now, Dick Gregory told you, hey, man, Mike was shot with a laser. You can go look that shit up. But the bottom line is that if somebody dies from, Dick Gregory, go watch the video. Dick Gregory got some real crazy shit. But if you pay attention, what's the one thing that happens? Whenever Dick Gregory says some shit, a year or two later, you find the evidence for the shit. Everything going back to when he said King was killed by Abernathy and Jesse Jackson, evidence. Everything Dick Gregory talks about, some kind of way that shit pops up where you're like, God, that was Dick. Also, he talks about the same shit me and you talked about. Me and you talked about it first when we talked about CIA having a gay bomb. And Dick Gregory comes out, he said in 1963, CIA, he said the same thing we said. It says they were developing a gay bomb. But what they said was it didn't work. He said the same thing did it not work because it didn't have the desired effect, or did it not work because you weren't able to make people gay? He said it didn't have the desired effect. That's what happened. That's what they mean it didn't work. They don't mean, but he said they're aware of what could make people. Yeah, look up Dick Gregory talks about all kinds of crazy shit. But the bottom line is, when somebody dies and you want to discredit them, what do? You say they're a drug addict or they died from drugs, and then everything that happens to that person or everything that person said all of a sudden is like he's a drug addict. That's what happens. But when Michael thought people were trying to kill him, he called Dick Gregory, and Dick Gregory took him to the hospital in San Diego. Look that shit up. People have been trying to kill Mike for a while, and he called Dick Gregory. So when Dick Gregory tells you that Mike was killed by something that you don't understand, look the interviews up, because when Mike got scared, he called Dick Gregory. Dick Gregory came and got him, drove him all the way to San Diego, like 100 miles away from his home, because he didn't trust the hospitals in his area. He said, Dick, they're trying to kill me. He does it in a high voice, of course. It's just the fact that when you want to discredit somebody and you sit here and say that they're a drug addict, they beat their wife, you do something where all of a sudden everything they've done now goes into question. And that's what they're doing with these people. Right now, they got a documentary put out by Oprah about Mike being a child molester. And then all of a sudden you find out that all these motherfuckers are grown and all these people are telling you Mike didn't touch us. Now, Mike did some shit he shouldn't have done, like he got that damn 15-year-old drunk in Japan, much of that deal. But no, all them people said Mike did not touch them. But still, they're pushing that agenda. So you got to be careful, because the media is so powerful that Malcolm X said you'll be rooting for the wrong person, and that's what happens. Look, I get it that if you're gay, you should be able to be gay and not lose a job or not be ridiculed. I dig that shit. But the funny thing is, gay people love to ridicule everybody else. You got to be able to take it as well as you give it. But what I'm saying is, if they're not fucking with where you stay, if they're not burning a cross in your yard, and if they're not stopping you from working, then what are we asking for these gay people? That's all I'm asking. These gay, trans, or whatever. Now, you don't make sure we're not grouping these minor attracted people in there too, because that's disgusting, my nigga. That's some sick shit. I don't know.
Straight up evil.
Yeah. So make sure you know what you're championing. championing. I can't say it right now, but make sure you know what you're fighting for.
And make sure that you can't
You agree
be,
with it.
no, your phone, coming back to the original conversation, your phone is a record of your personality,
Everything.
your choices, your social circles. And make sure that you are not doing things on your phone that can be used against you later. These days are so different than what they were 20 years ago. And so, even 10 years ago or 5 years ago. But you have to be careful that what you are looking at, the text that you are sending, the social media websites or programs or apps that you're using, there are things on there that can be taken and used against you. There's celebrities that have fallen victim to this.
Oh yeah, yeah. They had their phones hacked, or
Exactly.
information can be warped. Yeah,
So
that's deep.
these old phones are representations of your personal timeline. So be careful, even more careful than you've ever been before. But at the same time, be careful but not afraid. Be cautious but persistent. That's all I got. We out. Peace.
Holla back.